Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying, he gets reborn as Magneto inside of DC. What will Magneto do inside of DC? How will the DC universe change because of Magneto being inside of it?
DC, what if I'm reborn as Magneto? Chapter 1, Metal and Thunder. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on a cracked street under grey skies. Rain fell in narrow sheets, steady and cold. The air tasted of oil and rust. The hum of a city surrounded me, cars, sirens, voices, but beneath it all, there was something deeper. The pull. The constant, patient vibration of metal. I could feel everything. The iron rebar in the buildings, the steel frames of cars, the faint magnetic trace of every object forged by human hands. It pulsed around me, waiting for direction. My fingers flexed, and the world shifted. A man's wristwatch twitched on his arm, a fire hydrant hummed against the concrete. I looked down at my reflection in a puddle. Silver hair. Sharpened features. My face was older, harder, and I knew it immediately. This was not a dream, not a vision. It was Eric Lane Share. Magneto. For a moment, I stood still. Rain gathered on my brow and rolled down my cheek. Beneath the noise of the city, I felt exhilaration burn in my chest. The power was precise, immense, limitless in potential. I clenched my hand, and the metal drain cover nearby rose half an inch off the ground. I released it, and it dropped back with a sharp clang. I was in control. Entirely. A police siren echoed from down the street. I turned my head, scanning. The squad car slowed when it neared me. Gotham City Police. The logo was clear, printed in black over the car's side. That confirmed it. This was not Marvel's New York. This was Gotham. The door opened, and an officer stepped out, his jacket pulled tight against the rain. "Hey! You all right, sir?" he called, his voice rough. I straightened. My new body was tall, imposing, and carried a weight of authority without effort. I met his eyes calmly. "I am perfectly fine," I said. My tone came out smooth, deliberate, Magneto's own voice. Deep, measured, certain. The officer hesitated. "Well, it's not safe out here right now. Whole blocks being cleared after an incident at the docks." "An incident?" I asked. "Some kind of weapon theft," he said. "Wayne Industries stuff. Whole crate of experimental tech got lifted. You'd better get moving." He stepped closer. The steel in his belt buckle and the pistol on his hip hummed faintly. I could feel each component. The rain hit the brim of his cap, dripping down the edge. I nodded once. "I appreciate the concern, officer." He gave me a short look, then turned away. "Just be careful," he muttered, walking back to his car. When he drove off, I stayed still, watching the city lights flicker against the wet streets. Gotham. I had read about it, seen its shadows. This place was not gentle. It was built on fear, corruption, and greed. But for someone like me, it was opportunity. The metal in this city was endless. Every tower, every weapon, every bridge an extension of my will. I needed information. A timeline. A sense of where this world stood. I moved toward the nearest alley, my boots steady against the water. Trash cans lined the walls, dented and slick. The sound of the rain lessened as I stepped under a broken fire escape. I reached out with my mind, gently. The screws and bolts of the ladder lifted. The entire frame trembled and then descended slowly to my height. I climbed up, letting it retract after me. From the rooftop, I could see the skyline, Wayne Tower gleaming in the distance, the bat signal faint under the clouds, its light cut by rain. That answered the question. Batman existed. which meant the Justice League likely did as well. Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, gods walking among men. A smile touched my lips. So this is the world, I murmured quietly. And they call themselves protectors. The city stretched before me like an open circuit. I reached out, feeling the electricity of power lines, the steel veins of skyscrapers, the hum of magnetic fields crossing through the earth. It was overwhelming at first, the density of it, the precision required to navigate such energy. But Magneto's body, my body, handled it effortlessly. His instincts guided my control as naturally as breathing. A burst of sound cut through the rain. A helicopter swept across the skyline, its floodlight piercing the dark. I tracked it absently. Then, faintly, I heard another sound, metal clashing, the heavy rhythm of combat. Curiosity drew me toward it. I leapt down from the building, softening my landing by bending the rebar beneath the concrete. A few blocks away, an alley burned with flashing blue light. Someone was fighting. When I turned the corner, I saw him. Batman. His armor gleamed with rain, dark and precise. He moved with efficiency, striking down a thug holding a stolen rifle. The weapon flew from the man's hands, clattering against the wall. The moment I saw the gun, I extended my hand slightly. The weapon floated up, steady in the air. Batman turned instantly, his eyes narrowing through the cowl. He froze for only a second. Then he said, "Put it down." I held his gaze. It would be unwise to give back a weapon to a man who misuses it. Batman's tone was calm. "You're interfering." "Am I?" I asked, letting the rifle spin slowly in front of me. "You were already handling it." The thug groaned on the ground. Batman's eyes shifted toward him, then back to me. "Who are you?" "I am Magneto," I said simply. His silence stretched a moment. The name clearly meant nothing to him. Good. That made this cleaner. Batman approached cautiously, his cape dragging slightly against the wet ground. "You're not local," he said. "No," I replied, tilting my head slightly. "But I am here now." He glanced once at the floating rifle. "You have control over metal. That is one way to describe it. Then you understand how dangerous that can be in a city like this." I smiled faintly. "I understand perfectly. Which is why you should be grateful that I'm not your enemy." He didn't move. The silence between us was thick with tension but not hostility. He studied me, calculating. I could sense his armor's design: titanium weave, reinforced plates, concealed mechanisms. Complex, yet nothing beyond my understanding. He finally said, "You're powerful." "Very. Then you'll need to decide what you intend to do with that power." I stepped closer. The rifle still floated between us, motionless in the air. "I intend," I said slowly, "to ensure that this world does not make the same mistakes as the last one I knew." He frowned slightly. "What mistakes?" "Ones born of ignorance and fear." He didn't respond. I let the rifle drop into his hand. He caught it immediately, never breaking eye contact. "I have no quarrel with you, Batman," I said. "But I will not be told what I can or cannot do." He nodded once, a short, measured motion. "Then stay out of trouble." I watched him walk away, disappearing into the shadows. The rain intensified. I stood there for a long time, silent, considering. The interaction told me everything I needed to know. This world respected control and consequence. It was not the fractured war of mutants and humans, it was a hierarchy of power among gods. I could exist here without being questioned, as long as I chose my steps carefully. I turned my gaze toward Wayne Tower again. It would be a source of technology, of access. If I wanted to understand this world's structure, its politics and weapons, that was where I would begin. I extended my hand, and the loose screws of a nearby lamppost rose into the air. The metal responded like a heartbeat to my will. I closed my hand again, and they fell. Power was simple here. Discipline would define how I used it. I walked toward the heart of Gotham, my pace steady. Chapter 2, The Pulse Beneath the City. Night settled deeper over Gotham, and the rain had thinned to a constant drizzle. From the rooftop of an abandoned apartment complex, I could see the city's veins, its power grid, the magnetic hum of its transit systems, and the controlled signals pulsing beneath the surface. It was a living network of energy and alloy. Every circuit, every wire, every fragment of steel vibrated faintly under my control. I reached out with my hand, not to lift or move, but to listen. The magnetic fields formed patterns, shifting and pulsing with the rhythm of generators buried beneath the streets. The city was not chaotic. It was structured, layered. Someone had planned this with precision, as if hiding something within it. I closed my eyes and extended my reach further. Beneath the surface, the electrical flow changed direction. Not a natural grid pattern. It bent toward the eastern sector, toward Wayne Tower. It was too refined for ordinary corporate infrastructure. It had redundancies, secret channels, power spikes concealed within the data flow. I opened my eyes slowly. "So, you hide your secrets here, Batman," I said quietly. My voice carried its usual calm firmness, every word measured. I began walking along the rooftop edge. The wind carried the smell of rain and electricity. I stepped off the edge without hesitation, letting the iron scaffolding bend slightly to catch and lower me to the ground. My boots touched the wet pavement with precision. A passing car splashed through a puddle nearby. I barely glanced at it. My goal was simple: follow the pulse. Track the energy pattern and locate the hidden power source that sustained Batman's operations. The Batcave, if my deduction was correct, drew power through a private grid masked under Wayne Enterprises' secondary research systems. I started walking toward the tower. Every few steps, I stopped and listened, not with my ears, but through the magnetic resonance that surrounded me. The city's metal was an extension of my senses. The distant subway cars rumbled below, their friction generating sparks that brushed faintly against my awareness. After several blocks, I reached the perimeter of Wayne Tower. The structure rose high above, steel and glass woven into architectural order. Security cameras turned silently on their mounts. The motion sensors within their circuits hummed softly, their metallic cores laid bare to my perception. I reached out mentally and twisted the polarity of each nearby device. The cameras froze in place. I walked forward through the revolving doors. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit, nearly empty except for a single night guard behind the desk. He glanced up from a monitor. "Evening," he said. "Good evening," I replied, my tone polite, my posture steady. "Buildings closed to visitors at this hour," he said while straightening in his chair. "I am here for business," I said calmly. "Wayne Industries is a company of innovation. I have an interest in your research on electromagnetic technology." He frowned slightly. "You'll have to make an appointment during office hours." "I see." I nodded once. My eyes shifted briefly toward the computer monitor behind him. The metallic data drive within the tower's internal network flickered faintly to my senses. I gestured slightly, and the security feed looped back 30 seconds. The guard didn't notice. Without raising my voice, I said, "I think it would be best if you return to your patrol." He hesitated, then stood slowly. "Yet. I'll check the North Hall," he muttered, distracted, his thoughts unfocused. He walked away without looking back. I turned toward the elevator. Its mechanisms vibrated faintly under the current. I extended my hand, and the panel opened with a metallic click. The cables groaned slightly as the elevator descended to the lowest level. The descent was silent. I watched the floor numbers count down. My reflection in the steel walls remained calm and steady. When the doors opened, I stepped into a dark service corridor. The lighting here was different: low, indirect, utilitarian. Not intended for public use. The hum of the grid grew louder. I followed it through a narrow hall lined with pipes and power conduits. Each junction point sent faint ripples of magnetism outward. They merged into a single current flowing east. I walked in that direction, unhurried. The air was cool, tinged with the smell of machine oil. After several turns, I reached a sealed metal door. Its surface was smooth, reinforced. A hidden lock mechanism hummed beneath the steel. I placed my hand on it. Electronic security. Redundant layers, I said quietly to myself. A precaution worthy of him. I closed my eyes and concentrated. The tumblers clicked, the current shifted polarity, and the lock released with a sharp metallic snap. I stepped through into a larger maintenance tunnel. This section extended far deeper than the official blueprints would suggest. I could sense the construction: modern steel layered over older foundations. Someone had expanded this privately. As I walked, the hum intensified until I could identify it clearly, a direct power line extending toward the outskirts of the city. It led beyond the tower's jurisdiction, into the cliffs near the bay. The Batcave's location was confirmed. I followed the path through the tunnel, moving steadily. My boots echoed softly against the concrete floor. After 20 minutes, the magnetic field ahead shifted sharply. I had reached the threshold. The entrance was camouflaged by heavy rock and artificial shielding. Beneath it, complex machinery pulsed with controlled energy. I raised both hands slightly. The rocks vibrated. The magnetic locks embedded within them disengaged. The wall in front of me opened, revealing a hidden platform descending into darkness. I stepped onto it. The mechanism activated automatically, lowering me through the stone layers. The deeper I went, the stronger the concentration of metal became: vehicles, computers, weapons, all intricately designed. When the platform reached the bottom, I found myself standing at the edge of the Batcave. The vast space stretched before me, stalactites overhead, the sound of dripping water echoing in the distance. The Batmobile rested on its platform, sleek and armored. Dozens of monitors displayed data across the main console. The faint hum of electricity filled the air. I walked forward, examining the construction. Every piece of technology was efficient, carefully engineered. The magnetic currents were finely balanced to avoid detection. I reached out, tracing them mentally. The systems reacted to my presence. A hidden alarm triggered silently. I felt it before it sounded. I turned toward the upper level just as Batman emerged from the shadows. He moved with measured precision, his cape falling behind him. His voice was steady. "You shouldn't be here." I met his gaze calmly. "And yet I am." He walked forward. "You bypassed security meant to stop anyone." "I am not anyone," I said evenly. "I wished to understand the foundation of your operations. Now I do." He stopped near the edge of the platform. His eyes shifted briefly toward the central console. "What do you want?" "Information," I replied. "Your power systems are impressive. You have created a network independent of government control. That requires knowledge of magnetic flow." I recognized the signature. Batman's tone remained controlled. "You traced my power grid." "Yes," I said. "It was hidden well. But not from me." He studied me silently for a moment. The cave lights reflected faintly off his armor. "You have the ability to manipulate magnetic fields," he said. "That's rare." "Unique," I corrected. "What are you planning to do with what you've found?" I folded my hands behind my back. Nothing that would concern you. I wished to know how far this world's technology had progressed. I have my answer. His voice hardened slightly. If you intended harm, I'd have stopped you by now. I inclined my head. Then we understand each other. He took a step forward. If you have no hostile intent, leave my systems untouched. Your secrecy is intact, I said calmly. I have no need for your data. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You're powerful. But power without restraint causes destruction." I held his gaze. Restraint is a choice I have already made. He didn't argue. Instead, he turned slightly toward his computer. You'll leave the same way you came. Of course. I turned and walked back toward the platform. My movements were slow, deliberate. As I stepped onto it, the magnetic lift activated, rising through the rock. When I reached the upper tunnel again, I paused. The magnetic resonance of the Batcave continued beneath me, controlled and contained. I respected the discipline of his design. I walked back through the corridor, resealing the locks as I went. Once outside, I stepped into the rain again. The city spread before me in quiet order. I looked toward Wayne Tower one last time before walking into the street. The balance of this world was becoming clearer. Its protectors operated through secrecy and control. Power here was measured not only in strength, but in precision. I continued walking, the metal beneath the pavement shifting faintly under each step. Chapter 3, The Foundation Beneath Steel. The rain returned before dawn. The city was darker than before, heavy clouds pressed low, covering the skyline. I moved quietly through the lower district, the industrial sector where the noise of factories drowned all else. The air smelled of iron, smoke, and wet asphalt. Machines clattered inside warehouses, producing the metallic resonance I could sense from blocks away. This place suited my purpose. It was not clean or watched. The people here ignored what they did not understand. That made it perfect for concealment. I stopped before a fenced construction site, an abandoned manufacturing plant once used to build freight containers. The metal structure was strong, the foundation still sound. A crane stood rusting near the edge, its arms stiff under years of neglect. I extended my hand slightly. The bolts holding the gate lock twisted open. The gate creaked inward. I entered. The ground was uneven, covered in puddles and broken tools. The echoes of my footsteps mixed with the distant hum of machinery from other blocks. I walked to the center of the yard and examined the space. It had depth beneath the surface steel reinforcements, a hollowed layer of concrete from old freight lifts. I could sense the lines of metal spreading underground like roots. I crouched and pressed my palm against the cold surface. The magnetic field extended through the concrete. I adjusted the flow of the rebar below. The vibration was strong, stable. Good material. I stood again and looked around carefully. A sound came from behind me, a faint metallic shuffle. I turned my head slightly. A homeless man stood by the gate, his clothes soaked and torn. He looked startled. "You shouldn't be here," I said calmly. My tone was measured, steady. He raised his hands slightly. "I didn't mean nothing. Just thought this place was empty." "It will be," I said. "Find another shelter." He hesitated, then nodded quickly and left. I waited until his footsteps faded into the distance. I lifted both hands, palms outward. The ground trembled faintly. The steel beams within the earth responded to my will. I began reshaping the structure beneath me. The process took hours. The metal bent and fused, forming walls and corridors deep under the surface. The old freight shaft expanded downward, reinforced by newly aligned steel plates. The vibration of the machinery around me hid the noise. I worked carefully, maintaining precision. When the first layer was complete, I descended into the opening. The air was cooler below, still damp from the rain filtering through the cracks. I raised my hand again, and the remaining fragments of rusted machinery disassembled themselves, each bolt and screw rejoining in organized form. I constructed the framework of a central chamber circular, efficient, accessible by a single magnetic seal. The chamber was large enough for my purpose. I focused next on power. I could not rely solely on Gotham's grid, it was too closely watched. I needed an independent source. I extended my awareness outward, feeling the magnetic current through the city. There were industrial generators within reach. I redirected one of the older transmission lines toward my position. The flow of energy bent subtly, diverting without tripping the main sensors. The current fed into the new structure. The lights ignited with a low hum. The room brightened. The air vibrated softly as power stabilized. I stepped back, observing the metal surfaces reflect the dim glow. The result was practical, no unnecessary design, only function. I exhaled slowly, satisfied. I moved to the far wall and began assembling a workstation. Using scraps and repurposed materials from the abandoned yard, I constructed a simple but efficient console. It connected directly to the redirected current. Within minutes, the first operational systems came online. I accessed Gotham's public frequency grid next. My control over electromagnetic energy allowed me to read signals directly, bypassing hardware. I sorted through the frequencies: police communications, municipal power reports, industrial logs. Each gave me a clearer understanding of the city's infrastructure. I kept my attention on Wayne Industries' signal paths. Their energy transmissions were distinctive, encoded with high-frequency modulation. I traced several of them toward hidden subnetworks under the city. These were not connected to the public grid, they belonged to the private energy relay Batman used. I did not interfere, only observed. When I finished cataloging the primary frequencies, I stepped away from the console. My hand rested lightly on the wall. The surface felt warm from the electrical flow. I turned my focus to reinforcement. Gotham's soil was weak in this district, filled with old tunnels and broken pipelines. I strengthened the base of my chamber by compressing and binding the rebar around it. Each segment locked into place, creating stability. I worked with precision, my movements deliberate. When the structure held firm, I returned to the surface. The rain had lessened, reduced to a faint mist. The sky was a uniform gray. The construction yard looked unchanged from above: rusted, broken, abandoned. Perfect. I inspected the perimeter once more to confirm no one had noticed my activity. The city moved as usual. A faint vibration touched my awareness. A signal encrypted, faint, coming from within the police network. I listened carefully. The voice was Commissioner Gordon's. Unit 4, report on disturbances in the industrial zone. Possible unauthorized power usage. I turned my gaze toward the nearest lamp post. Its magnetic signature carried the signal. I adjusted the polarity slightly, blurring my power trace. The transmission recalibrated itself, losing accuracy. Must be a faulty reading, another officer replied. Gordon's voice returned. Verify it. No power surges in that area should go unaccounted for. I listened until the signal ended. Then I turned away. I had expected detection attempts. Gotham was filled with vigilant minds. My concealment, however, was not something they could easily penetrate. Still, it would be unwise to draw attention so soon. I needed to integrate my operations into the city's magnetic systems more naturally. I walked along the street until I reached a transformer station. Its structure was fenced, marked with warning signs. The metal gates opened at my command. Inside, I examined the central generator. The current moved rhythmically through the coils. I altered the phase slightly, aligning it with my underground conduit. The change would keep my power usage indistinguishable from ordinary fluctuations. I completed the adjustment and closed the gate behind me. By nightfall, I returned to the underground chamber. The lights came on automatically as I entered. The hum of the magnetic core was steady, balanced. I sat before the console again and activated the monitoring systems. A map of Gotham's electromagnetic distribution appeared before me, every tower, relay, and transmission point rendered in precise detail. This map would serve as both guide and defense. I could sense any intrusion within the magnetic field instantly. Nothing would occur in the city without my awareness. Hours passed as I refined the network. I isolated several secure frequencies used by the Gotham Police and another set originating from the Wayne satellite grid. The data revealed periodic surges, short but strong, consistent with the energy output of a hidden facility. The Batcave maintained intermittent contact with satellite relays to monitor global patterns. I leaned back slightly, my expression neutral. My purpose was not confrontation. Knowledge was the foundation of control. The soft sound of rain above reached the chamber faintly through the concrete. I stood and walked toward the central platform, adjusting the environmental temperature by manipulating the magnetic current. The air cooled evenly. I turned my attention next to defense. I shaped the metal walls into a secondary layer of shielding, resistant to detection by standard sensors. The composition adjusted under my will, absorbing electromagnetic reflection. The process required fine control. I worked in silence until the readings stabilized. Once finished, I examined the chamber again. It was clean, efficient, hidden from all surveillance. The foundation was complete. My next step was observation. Gotham's balance of power depended heavily on its crime networks and the masked vigilantes that opposed them. I needed data from both sides. I accessed the city's criminal communications. Many of them used cheap, outdated radio equipment simple to intercept. Within minutes, I had full access to the ongoing exchanges between the gangs that controlled the docks, the Narrows, and the East Industrial Bloc. Their speech patterns revealed their chain of command and their movements. From this information, I began constructing a map of influence. I identified 3 major groups operating independently but often overlapping in smuggling routes. I noted each and stored their frequencies for later use. After confirming the city's magnetic alignment once more, I walked toward the lift and ascended to the surface. The night air was colder now. I watched the steam rise from the streets as distant traffic lights changed rhythmically. A faint sound came from across the street, a police car passing slowly. I stood motionless until it turned the corner. When it was gone, I walked back toward the construction gate. I closed it with a small movement of my hand, sealing the lock in place again. The city continued its usual rhythm. The wind carried faint traces of heat and dust from the factories nearby. I began walking toward the inner district, my steps steady. I stopped briefly beneath a street lamp. The light flickered once before stabilizing. I reached up, touching the post lightly. The magnetic flow vibrated through it. The city's energy responded instantly to me. Every current, every piece of metal obeyed without resistance. I felt the control settle into place like a natural extension of my movement. I lowered my hand and continued walking. By the time I returned to the entrance of my base, dawn had started breaking. The first light reached across the buildings, weak and colorless. I descended into the chamber again and examined the systems one final time. Everything functioned as intended. I stood in the center of the room, listening to the quiet hum of power. The air was still. My work here was complete for now. Chapter 4, The Iron Veins of Gotham. The rain had ended. The city was quiet except for the faint sound of dripping water from the rooftops. I stood above my underground base, the industrial sector still half asleep. The gray of dawn hung over the skyline, turning steel to dull silver. I lowered my gaze to the cracked concrete beneath my feet and extended my hand. The ground shifted slightly. The magnetic field stretched outward in steady waves, reaching across the city blocks, through the rail lines, and into the veins of Gotham's infrastructure. Every bolt, every girder, every hidden pipe responded. The metal carried memory, it spoke through vibration. I could sense the structure of the city as clearly as if it were drawn before me. This would serve as the framework. I descended the old stairwell that led back into the base. The reinforced door opened at my command, its locks disengaging silently. The hum of my power grid greeted me as I entered. The chamber's light was even, pale, reflecting off clean metallic walls. I walked to the center platform where the main console stood. The monitoring display pulsed softly. The energy signatures of the city appeared as layered patterns. I studied the chart with steady focus. Gotham's central power network was strong, but not impenetrable. Its limitations were human ones: maintenance errors, age, inefficiency. All of these could be corrected. I intended to merge my structure into this system, unseen but essential. I pressed my palm to the console's surface. The metal plates around the room responded instantly, shifting into motion. From beneath the floor, support beams rose, connecting with the existing magnetic field. They extended outward through the soil, linking to the city's infrastructure. I guided each movement carefully. "Flow at 80%, I said quietly. The control voice system responded, its neutral tone confirming the calibration. The process continued for several hours. Each conduit fused precisely, each reinforcement adjusted for stability. The city's network was vast, but my reach was broader still. I expanded the integration steadily, connecting to secondary grids, unused channels, and abandoned industrial relays. Once the framework was complete, I adjusted the polarity of the entire structure. The magnetic field stabilized. The base was now directly linked to Gotham's hidden metallic veins. Any attempt to tamper with the grid would register instantly in my awareness. I moved toward the observation screen again. A soft beeping indicated new data input. The signal came from a low-frequency interference along the subway line running under the Narrows. I focused on it. A section of rail had been recently replaced with imported steel. Its resonance was sharper. Likely new city maintenance, but I marked it for later inspection. The grid expansion required balance. I walked toward the center of the chamber and raised my hands slightly. The air vibrated faintly as I synchronized the currents. A low hum filled the space. I listened until the vibration aligned perfectly. Then I released it. The energy flow settled into calm equilibrium. The lights brightened automatically. I stepped back, observing the result. The magnetic lines surrounding Gotham now formed an invisible defense network. Any large-scale electromagnetic activity, any explosion or energy discharge, would pass through me first. I could stop it, redirect it, or erase it entirely. I activated a secondary console on the side wall. The screen displayed local government frequencies. I monitored the current city operations: road closures, industrial permits, police assignments. These details gave me predictable patterns for movement and activity. A sudden signal came through the police frequency. It was a report of increased gang presence near the docks. I listened without expression. "Units 3 and 5, proceed to Pier 16, a dispatcher ordered. Another voice responded. "We've got heavy weapons down here. Military grade." I narrowed my eyes slightly. The weapons shipments in Gotham often involved stolen materials, many containing steel alloys. That could disrupt the balance of my grid. I reached out mentally, tracing the magnetic signature of the shipment. The steel crates carried distinct electromagnetic resonance: dense, foreign alloy. I memorized the frequency. If it became a consistent pattern, I would address it. For now, I remained focused on reinforcing my system. I adjusted the control interface again. The underground structure extended further, connecting to Gotham's east power conduit. The integration process increased the base's field of influence. I kept the growth slow and measured. Rapid expansion could draw attention. While the network stabilized, I took a moment to rest my hands on the metal railing that surrounded the platform. The surface was smooth, cold, and familiar. The quiet vibration of power beneath it was steady. I felt a faint trace of satisfaction. The system worked exactly as intended. I began configuring the defense subroutine. The design was simple. Any unauthorized magnetic fluctuation within a defined radius would trigger an immediate neutralizing response. The city's own metallic infrastructure would act as the containment mechanism. I tested the system. A small magnetic impulse was released from a concealed point outside the base. The signal reached me within half a second. The defense network responded immediately, suppressing the disturbance and stabilizing the field. I nodded once. It was efficient. When the process finished, I stored the data and turned toward the main console again. I accessed Gotham's weather reports next. The upcoming week predicted several thunderstorms. I could use them to mask energy redirections for expansion. The natural interference would make detection unlikely. The city's infrastructure map reappeared on the screen. I traced the connections visually, marking the most efficient nodes for future integration. The steel bridges over the river were particularly valuable. They carried continuous magnetic current from vehicle movement. Their structure could easily become extensions of my network. I made note of 3 primary bridge systems for immediate inclusion. To manage this, I required physical calibration. I left the base and returned to the surface. The air outside was heavy with the smell of rain-soaked iron. The streets were empty, save for the distant sound of traffic. I walked with even steps toward the nearest bridge. The structure loomed above the river, its steel beams still wet. The sound of running water mixed with the hum of nearby generators. I approached the base of the bridge and placed my hand against one of its supports. The metal was dense, strong, and uncorroded. I reached inward with my power and linked it to the grid. The flow synchronized immediately. I did the same for the next 2 supports. The vibration spread evenly across the bridge. I extended my control across the span, adjusting the field until it connected to the main Gotham grid. When it was complete, I withdrew my hand and stepped back. The bridge was now part of the defense network. I could manipulate its magnetic alignment at will, shift its balance, or reinforce it against attack. The process continued smoothly for the other structures. By the time I returned to the base, several hours had passed. The lights responded automatically as I entered. I checked the main display again. The new nodes registered clearly. The network had expanded significantly. The hum of the system filled the chamber. I walked slowly around the perimeter, ensuring all connections remained stable. Every wall and support beam pulsed faintly with the city's current. I moved toward a smaller terminal to begin recording the new field data. My fingers rested lightly against the surface as the readout compiled. The map of Gotham now glowed brighter, the integrated sections illuminated in red. Satisfied, I crossed to the power core at the rear of the chamber. The generator emitted a soft, steady pulse. I adjusted its settings to distribute energy equally through the expanded grid. The flow stabilized instantly. I looked around the chamber again. The improvements were efficient, functional, precise. Nothing wasted. The defense system was ready for calibration. I returned to the main console. Initiate full synchronization, I said clearly. The system responded at once. The magnetic current through the entire structure surged briefly, then balanced. The connection between my base and Gotham's infrastructure was complete. I examined the readings carefully. The power response was uniform, the signal clear. The defense perimeter covered nearly half the city already. I adjusted the sensitivity parameters, narrowing the alert threshold to specific frequencies. That would ensure no interference from ordinary power fluctuations. When the final calibration ended, I stood in silence for a long moment. The air was still except for the hum of electricity. My expression remained composed. I had achieved the intended result. The network now functioned as both shield and weapon. Any manipulation of metal within Gotham, whether technological or destructive, would occur within my reach. I walked toward the lift and ascended to the surface once more. The sky was darkening again, clouds gathered overhead. The first sound of thunder rolled faintly through the distance. I raised my gaze toward the skyline. Lightning flashed briefly across the edge of the city, illuminating the tall buildings and bridges that now responded to my presence. The storm's electromagnetic charge vibrated faintly in the air. I lowered my hand to my side and turned back toward the industrial sector. The faint sound of generators echoed through the night. I walked slowly, my steps even. The city would continue as it always had, unaware that its very structure was now connected to a new force beneath it. I returned to the base entrance, sealing the magnetic lock behind me. The chamber lights flickered once, then steadied. The readings on the console displayed perfect synchronization. I rested my hand against the smooth steel of the central platform. The vibration of energy was constant, even, precise. The grid was now a part of me, and I a part of it. Chapter 5, The Steel Dominion. The storm continued through the night. Thunder rolled across the skyline, shaking the glass of Gotham's towers. Lightning illuminated the city in steady rhythm, the streets flashing bright and then returning to shadow. I stood at the center of my underground chamber, monitoring the final calibration of the defense grid. The lights from the console reflected faintly off the steel walls. The readings were exact. Every section of the city's infrastructure now connected to my network. The system's reach extended from the industrial sector through the main power lines, along the bridges, and into the magnetic foundations of Gotham's transit tunnels. I had refined each connection until no part of the field contained instability. The grid was now capable of absorbing, deflecting, or manipulating any magnetic or electrical disturbance within the city. I rested my hand lightly on the console. The hum of the current ran smoothly beneath the surface. Integration level at 100%, I said quietly. The system responded with confirmation. The next phase required strengthening the primary support lines. I activated the core sequence. Across Gotham, unseen by its citizens, the metal foundations of bridges and buildings adjusted slightly. Every beam, cable, and support redistributed tension evenly. I could sense the movement in exact detail, the shifting of alloy, the alignment of magnetic poles. The process demanded focus. I closed my eyes, extending my awareness outward. The city's magnetic pattern appeared in my mind as an orderly structure, each section distinct. I guided the flow carefully, avoiding disruption to the existing electrical systems. The air around me vibrated faintly from the effort. After several minutes, the adjustment stabilized. The storm above intensified. I could feel the atmospheric charge pressing against the city's surface. It amplified the magnetic resonance within my network, enhancing the current flow. I used the energy to reinforce the outermost layer of the defense grid. The steel bridges across the river pulsed with new alignment. The field expanded outward until it covered the entire urban perimeter. I opened my eyes and checked the display. The readings showed full synchronization. Every metallic structure within Gotham was now part of the same magnetic field. I stepped back from the console, my expression steady. The work had reached its intended conclusion. I turned toward the smaller side terminal. It displayed real-time surveillance from intercepted government channels. The broadcast feed from the Department of Energy showed no anomalies detected. My presence remained hidden. I adjusted one of the readings manually. The system's efficiency was higher than anticipated. Power draw was stable despite the expanded reach. I monitored it for several more minutes before leaving the control platform. The lift rose to the surface smoothly. When I stepped out, the air was thick with moisture. Rain fell lightly, carried sideways by the wind. I looked up at the skyline. Lightning flickered behind Wayne Tower. The sound of generators carried faintly across the streets. I began walking toward the nearest bridge to conduct a final inspection. The streets were empty. Water pooled along the pavement, reflecting the faint glow of street lamps. I moved with purpose, my boots striking the wet ground in steady rhythm. When I reached the bridge, I stopped at its base. The steel structure vibrated faintly, the sound masked by rain. I placed my hand against the cold surface. The magnetic field responded instantly, steady and balanced. The alignment remained perfect. I could feel the pulse of energy traveling through the cables overhead. I walked along the side walkway. A maintenance truck stood parked near the far end. 2 workers were inside, sheltering from the rain. Their tools lay scattered near the guardrail. One of them noticed me. "Hey, bridge is closed right now," he said. I turned my head slightly. "I am aware," I said calmly. My tone was composed, deliberate. He frowned. "You work with the city." "I oversee structural maintenance," I said. My voice carried authority. He accepted it without question. "Bad weather for it," he muttered. "Work continues regardless of weather," I replied. He nodded, unconcerned, and turned back toward the truck. I examined the bridge again. The magnetic stability was uniform across its length. The rain strengthened the conductivity slightly, but it posed no threat. I extended my hand briefly. The bolts along the railing tightened themselves in unison. The structure settled with a soft groan. I lowered my hand and stepped back. The workers did not notice. They spoke quietly between themselves, their voices lost beneath the sound of rain. When I was satisfied, I left the bridge and returned to the street. The network extended beyond visible range, connecting through the underground power lines to every significant metallic concentration in the city. The field was absolute. I began walking toward the industrial quarter again. The storm continued overhead, providing excellent cover. Every few minutes, I paused to listen. Through the hum of the city, I could sense distant motion trains, electric trams, cars, all producing small fluctuations in the field. Each was accounted for and balanced automatically by the system. When I reached the perimeter of my base, I stopped near a power substation. I examined it carefully. The magnetic field surrounding the coils glowed faintly in my perception. The lines fed directly into the network's outer layer. I reinforced them, stabilizing the current. The transformer emitted a low tone as the flow corrected. I adjusted the grounding rods, pulling the metal deeper into the earth for balance. The entire structure responded with precision. I turned away once it reached full stability. Back inside the base, the readings confirmed all adjustments. The city's magnetic grid functioned as intended, no interference, no detection. I accessed the long-range sensor logs. The Justice League's satellite scans had passed twice over Gotham that week. Neither had identified the alterations. The field operated under standard electromagnetic noise levels. I moved toward the equipment station at the edge of the chamber. Several drones lay on the table, simple in design, constructed from repurposed scrap and steel plating. I lifted one and powered it on. It hovered slightly, its magnetic core responding to my control. I guided it toward the far wall. The drone attached itself to the steel surface. I directed it to the console, connecting it to the defense grid. Its sensors expanded my field of awareness further, increasing precision at the edges of the network. I prepared 3 more drones and set them to patrol the industrial perimeter. Their movement created subtle adjustments in the city's magnetic field, indistinguishable from ordinary fluctuations. Once the drones were deployed, I turned back to the central console. The storm outside had intensified again. The energy readings spiked slightly. I redirected the excess current into reserve capacitors, ensuring no overload occurred. The room brightened momentarily, then dimmed back to normal levels. I moved around the chamber, examining each section of the system personally. The air smelled faintly of ozone. The vibration of energy beneath the steel floor was steady. I adjusted several control panels manually, testing the response speed of the network. The output remained consistent. I stood at the main terminal again and observed the digital map. Gotham appeared divided into sectors, each section connected by magnetic lines. I zoomed in on the western block close to the Narrows. Power fluctuations there were slightly irregular. I traced the source to an old generator station near the river. I left the base again, taking the service tunnel to the surface. The station lay a few blocks away. When I arrived, the building was half collapsed, its brick walls cracked. The generator inside still operated, producing a low hum. I placed my hand on its outer shell. The metal was corroded. I repaired it instantly, aligning the damaged structure with a small magnetic adjustment. The generator resumed normal function. The lights overhead flickered back to steady brightness. The city's power grid rebalanced itself. I stood still for several moments, ensuring the readings normalized. The generator's rhythm matched the rest of the system perfectly. I returned to the base before sunrise. The storm began to fade, replaced by a low gray sky. I checked the data one final time. The defense network was now complete. Gotham's entire metallic infrastructure operated under my command. I crossed the chamber to the central platform. The system's control interface displayed real-time readings of energy distribution across the city. Each node pulsed steadily. I extended my hand and tested the farthest connection, the Wayne Tower frame. The steel responded immediately, its molecular alignment shifting by a fraction. The response was instantaneous, precise, obedient. I withdrew my hand slowly. My expression remained neutral. The system functioned perfectly. Every section of the city now operated within my magnetic influence. I turned to the smaller console and began configuring automated routines. The defense system would respond independently to minor disturbances without my direct attention. I tested the automation by releasing a small magnetic impulse from a secondary drone. The system detected and neutralized it within seconds. The protocol worked exactly as intended. Hours passed as I refined each process. The base hummed quietly. The faint light from the overhead fixtures cast clear reflections on the steel surfaces. I maintained focus until every calibration reached its intended level. When I finally stepped back from the console, the readings were complete. The network's reach, stability, and concealment were absolute. The city's foundations, transportation, and power lines were all tied together under a single control system. I stood in silence, the sound of machinery filling the chamber. My work for the night was done. Chapter 6, The Depths Beneath the City. The storm had cleared, leaving behind damp streets and a heavy, unmoving mist that hung low over Gotham. The early light filtered through the haze, reflecting off puddles and steel in uneven patterns. I stood within my underground command chamber, monitoring the grid as usual. The magnetic field extended perfectly across the city. Every structure remained aligned. Every current flowed in proper sequence. Nothing appeared unusual. Until the signal appeared. It was faint at first, a pulse buried deep below the existing subway lines. The frequency did not match any municipal signature. I examined it closely, isolating the interference. The magnetic resonance was complex, layered, and precise. It pulsed rhythmically, unlike natural fluctuations. It came from far below the city, deeper than the utility systems, near bedrock. I increased the scan range. The readings sharpened. Beneath the western line, an area roughly 3 kilometers wide, showed metallic density inconsistent with Gotham's standard construction materials. The alloy reflected electromagnetic fields in a controlled pattern. It was a containment grid government design. I ran a secondary analysis. The power readings matched the specifications of Project Cadmus, a classified research branch under government control. The alloy's design used a rare synthetic compound, similar to steel but with higher magnetic resistance. I narrowed my eyes slightly. This required personal inspection. I adjusted the grid output to compensate for my absence. The defense system would remain stable while I investigated. I retrieved my helmet from its stand, fitting it with practiced ease. The metal responded perfectly to my control, sealing smoothly. I left the chamber and moved through the access corridor leading to the old subway maintenance tunnel. The air grew colder as I descended. The faint smell of oil and dust mixed with damp concrete. The tunnel lights flickered as I passed. I extended my hand. The bolts securing the old maintenance gate twisted loose, and the gate opened quietly. I entered the tunnel beyond, my footsteps steady against the metal tracks. The air carried a low hum from distant power lines. I followed the magnetic signature deeper underground. The pulse grew stronger, the frequency consistent. The interference pattern suggested an active system, likely automated defense. I adjusted my perception, tracing each layer of metal until the outline of the underground structure took form in my awareness. After 20 minutes of walking, I reached a sealed maintenance hatch embedded in the wall. It was newer than the surrounding infrastructure. The material was reinforced titanium composite. I placed my palm against it. The metal resisted slightly, an indication of magnetic shielding. I concentrated. The resistance cracked under precise adjustment. The bolts retracted, and the hatch swung open. A narrow access corridor stretched beyond it, leading downward at a sharp angle. I descended. The temperature dropped as I moved lower. The sound of machinery grew louder, steady, mechanical, controlled. The air smelled of ozone and coolant. The walls were lined with alloy panels that vibrated faintly with energy flow. At the corridor's end stood a large blast door. The surface bore a faint government insignia, a triangle enclosing an eye. The Cadmus symbol. I reached out, running my fingers across the surface. The metal's resistance confirmed its magnetic reinforcement. I examined its inner structure through perception alone. It was locked through multiple electromagnetically stabilized bolts. I raised my hand slowly. The field surrounding the door distorted under pressure. One by one, the locks disengaged. The door opened with a low metallic groan. Beyond it lay a vast chamber illuminated by white industrial lighting. Rows of containment pods filled the space, each constructed from the same alloy as the outer door. Cables ran along the ceiling, feeding into the pods through thick conduits. I stepped forward. The floor plates shifted slightly under my boots. My eyes moved over the nearest row of pods. Each one held a metallic organism, a fusion of synthetic and organic material. Their forms varied, but all shared the same structural pattern. These were weapon prototypes, hybrids of metal and biology. I approached one pod and examined its design. The material resisted standard magnetic manipulation, but not completely. With precision, I adjusted the polarity around its surface. The readings confirmed it an alloy with anti-magnetic properties, yet not immune. A human attempt at control over forces they did not understand. Footsteps echoed faintly from the far end of the chamber. I turned my head. 3 guards entered, their weapons raised. Their armor carried the Cadmus insignia, lined with low-level magnetic dampeners. "Halt!" one shouted. I straightened. "Lower your weapons," I said evenly. My tone was calm, commanding. The man hesitated. "You're trespassing in a restricted facility." "I am examining what belongs to no one," I said. My voice carried clear authority. Put your hands where I can see them, the lead guard ordered. I raised my hand slightly. The weapons were metal. They lifted from their hands instantly, twisting apart in midair. The guards froze, shocked. You have no need for these, I said. I sent the pieces clattering harmlessly to the far wall. Who are you? The second guard demanded. I am Magneto, I said simply. The sound of my name filled the chamber. The guards looked uncertain. None of them recognized the name. Get back up, the lead ordered. Before he could reach for his communicator, I extended my hand again. The device disassembled instantly. That will not be necessary, I said. They stepped back cautiously. I turned my attention to the far end of the chamber. A door led to an observation room overlooking the pods. I walked toward it. The guards did not follow. Inside the observation room, the lights were brighter. Several computer stations lined the walls, displaying data readouts on the containment units. I scanned the screens. Each pod contained genetic identifiers tied to various meta-humans, some known, others experimental. Project Cadmus was recreating meta-human abilities through artificial construction, combining genetic material with magnetic-resistant alloys. I examined the research logs. One line of data referenced Subject M08 active regeneration sequence suspended due to electromagnetic interference. I accessed the video log associated with the file. The footage showed a humanoid figure encased in metallic armor. The subject's body regenerated damaged alloy tissue under electrical stimulus. The process was unstable but functional. I closed the log and turned away. My focus returned to the containment chamber below. The hybrids were dormant, but the systems monitoring them were active. Each one emitted a faint magnetic signal, distinct yet coordinated. I raised both hands slightly. The air around me shifted as I synchronized with the containment alloy. The resistance was strong, but not absolute. I adjusted the frequency until the pod's field stabilized. The readings on the monitors began to change. Alarms sounded immediately. Red lights flashed across the walls. I heard the distant sound of mechanical locks engaging. Automated defense systems activated. Turrets descended from the ceiling, their barrels tracking my position. I extended my hand calmly. The turrets froze, then turned toward the walls instead. The barrels folded inward and compacted into the ceiling again. A security voice spoke over the intercom. Unidentified entity, stand down. This facility is under federal jurisdiction. I looked toward the speaker. You built weapons you cannot control, I said evenly. You have failed to understand your own creation. Security en route, the voice replied. I ignored it. My attention returned to the central containment row. The pods vibrated under the magnetic distortion I introduced. Their surfaces cracked. The lights flickered. I released the pressure immediately, ensuring no full breach occurred. I only needed the readings. The energy response was clear. The alloy operated at 75% magnetic resistance. Strong, but still within range of control if pressure were increased. I recorded the information mentally. Heavy footsteps approached from the corridor. Reinforcements. I turned and began walking back toward the entrance. When the first squad entered, they formed a defensive line. Their weapons were advanced plasma-based, minimal metal composition. A wise precaution. Their leader stepped forward. You are under arrest, he said firmly. I met his gaze. You lack the means, I replied. He signaled to fire. The plasma rounds discharged, but before they reached me, the energy dispersed against the magnetic field surrounding my body. The light dimmed instantly. I moved my hand slightly. The armor plating on their suits compressed around their limbs. They fell to the floor, immobilized but unharmed. You will remain still, I said. My voice remained calm. They obeyed instinctively, struggling but unable to move. I continued toward the exit. The blast door began to close automatically. I reached out and held it open effortlessly. The metal bent to my will, folding aside until I passed through. Once outside the chamber, I resealed the door behind me. The locks re-engaged, undamaged. The facility would assume the anomaly had been contained. I walked back up the corridor toward the surface. The lights flickered as I passed. The air grew warmer. The hum of machinery faded with each step. When I reached the subway tunnel again, I closed the hatch behind me and resealed it completely. I stood in silence for a moment, adjusting my breathing. The alloy used in Cadmus's construction was notable resistant, but imperfect. They were experimenting with metals designed to counteract magnetic influence. That knowledge could not remain exclusive to them. I walked along the tunnel until I reached the nearest access point to my grid. The connection re-established instantly. The data streamed through my awareness, updating the network. I integrated the new alloy signatures into my database. By the time I returned to my base, the chamber's systems had already adapted. The readings confirmed the update. My defense grid now recognized and compensated for the Cadmus alloy. I removed my helmet and placed it on the console. The metal surface reflected the low light. The chamber hummed steadily with energy. I reviewed the data one last time. The government's experiments would continue, but now they would do so under my awareness. Their attempts at control had introduced new possibilities for improvement in my own systems. I turned toward the lift. The air was cool, carrying the faint vibration of the city above. I stepped onto the platform and ascended slowly. The lights brightened as I rose toward the surface. The city awaited. Chapter 7, Countermeasure and Control. When I returned to my base, the faint scent of ozone and dust still lingered in the air. The chamber's light reflected evenly across the polished steel surfaces. I placed my helmet on the central console and watched the monitors stabilize from standby mode to full operation. The readings from my earlier infiltration streamed through the display. Lines of data scrolled continuously, each entry marked by the Cadmus alloy signature I had recorded. The alloy had high magnetic resistance, stronger than any steel composite used in Gotham's existing infrastructure. Its density prevented full manipulation, but its structural code was imperfect. It relied on layered molecular orientation rather than intrinsic resistance. That weakness was sufficient. I could adapt the city's grid to account for it. I moved toward the side workstation. The control pad responded instantly to my touch. I accessed the electromagnetic field configurations that managed Gotham's defense system. Every bridge, building, and transit tunnel appeared across the screen in ordered lines. I began inputting the Cadmus alloy's properties, mapping its composition against the existing grid. The base vibrated faintly as the process began. I adjusted the current to a precise frequency, aligning the defensive field to identify the new alloy automatically. The computers calculated the integration rate. 30% in progress, rising steadily. While the system updated, I walked toward the secondary generator chamber. The heavy metal doors opened with a soft mechanical sound. The generator core emitted a low hum, the blue-white glow of steady energy pulsating inside the containment shell. I placed my hand on the outer layer. The metal warmed slightly at the contact. Energy flow nominal, the automated readout announced. Begin recalibration, I said clearly. The core's internal field shifted. The hum deepened. I adjusted the containment pressure manually, bringing the flow to precise balance. The current stabilized immediately. I turned back toward the main room, satisfied with the result. Returning to the console, I examined the progress report. Integration had reached 80%. The defensive network now recognized the Cadmus alloy signature across its field range. To test it, I prepared a simulation. I extended my hand toward the nearest console panel. A sample plate of ordinary steel rose from the table, floating steadily. I altered its magnetic polarity until it mirrored the Cadmus alloy's resistance pattern. The grid responded instantly. The containment field adjusted its energy output to counteract the change, locking the plate firmly in place. I allowed a slight nod of satisfaction. The modification worked. The defense grid now compensated for all known magnetic-resistant alloys. Gotham's infrastructure would remain secure regardless of external interference. I transferred the new parameters to the secondary control lines, ensuring redundancy in case of power fluctuation. The data upload took several minutes. The hum of the machines filled the silence. I used the time to examine the broader readings of the city. A faint anomaly registered in the South Industrial Block. The source was a shipment of experimental metal transported under private contract. The container was shielded, but its magnetic pattern was consistent with the same alloy used in Cadmus. I marked the coordinates. The shipment would arrive at Gotham Harbor by evening. It required interception before distribution. I activated the console's transmission array, synchronizing it with the drone network. The 4 drones stationed across the city received the update. Their systems aligned with the enhanced magnetic frequency parameters. I sent them the coordinates of the harbor shipment and instructed observation only. The grid connection brightened briefly as the drones departed, their signals merging with the network's outer layer. I watched their progress through the city map until they reached the docks. Through the display, I observed the harbor. Workers moved crates under dim light. The air was heavy with fog. The cargo marked with restricted emblems was transferred from a military truck to an armored container. The material was unmistakable, the same alloy, freshly shipped. Track their movement, I ordered. The system confirmed. The drones followed at a distance. The convoy turned inland, heading toward the Gotham Research Division under government oversight. That explained the transport method. The alloy would be tested for industrial integration. I would not permit that. I retrieved my helmet and placed it firmly. The locks sealed with a quiet click. I moved toward the lift and ascended. The night was clear above ground. The air smelled faintly of salt and oil from the docks. I walked along the narrow road leading toward the harbor. The area was quiet, the sound of engines carrying faintly through the fog. The convoy approached from the main road, escorted by 2 armored vehicles. I stepped aside, positioning myself behind a row of storage containers. I raised my hand slightly. The bolts securing the nearest metal gate twisted quietly, then released. I extended my awareness outward, connecting to the vehicles. The truck's engines vibrated through the ground, steady and mechanical. Their armor was standard composite, vulnerable to magnetic manipulation. I focused on the lead vehicle. The steel components of its braking system responded immediately. The truck slowed, confused drivers attempting to compensate. When they stopped, the soldiers exited cautiously. Their weapons were raised. I stepped forward into the open. "Halt!" one of them shouted. They aimed directly at me. I raised my hand slightly. Their rifles lifted out of their grip and floated beside them, disassembled instantly. I spoke calmly. "Your cargo is no longer required for your government's use." "Who are you?" one asked, tension in his voice. "Magneto," I said. My voice was steady. "What do you want?" "The materials you carry. They belong to those who understand them." He reached for his communicator, but it crumbled in his hand. The air around us shifted faintly. The truck doors unlocked with a metallic click. I gestured toward them, and the containers slid out onto the pavement. The soldiers backed away slowly, realizing resistance was useless. I approached the containers. Their locks were magnetically shielded, but not enough to stop me. I dismantled them with precision. Inside lay slabs of the same alloy, each one identical to the material used in Cadmus's facility. I touched the surface. The magnetic field pushed back faintly. The resistance was consistent with my data. I lifted one slab using a controlled magnetic pulse and transferred it into the air beside me. The weight balanced easily. I looked toward the soldiers. "You will report that your shipment was intercepted by forces unknown to you," I said. "That is what your superiors will expect." None of them replied. They remained still. I raised my hand again, and the metal restraints of their weapons reassembled themselves harmlessly on the ground beside them. "Leave," I said simply. They obeyed, retreating toward the road. I turned back to the container. The remaining alloy plates hovered into the air. They followed me as I walked back toward the industrial sector. The fog concealed their movement completely. When I reached the base entrance, the heavy doors opened automatically. The slabs followed me down into the chamber and arranged themselves neatly on the platform. I dismissed them to the far wall, stacking them for analysis. The base recognized the new material and began scanning immediately. I approached the console and initiated structural decomposition. The computer analyzed the molecular orientation in real time. The readings confirmed my earlier assumption: the material's resistance derived from alternating magnetic polarity layers. A simple yet effective design. I began constructing a counter-frequency to neutralize it. I adjusted the waveform manually, altering the magnetic alignment of the test field. The alloy plates vibrated faintly. I increased the field pressure by a fraction. The vibration stabilized, the resistance collapsing under precise calibration. The alloy now responded normally to manipulation. I rotated one slab in midair, testing the full range of control. It moved without resistance. The result was satisfactory. The weakness had been confirmed and resolved. I saved the new data to the Defense Grids database, updating the system protocols. Gotham's infrastructure now included countermeasures specifically designed for Cadmus alloys. The entire process took several hours. When it was complete, I stood before the console and reviewed the updated readings. The defensive field now operated at full synchronization, capable of identifying and neutralizing all recorded magnetic resistant metals. I removed my helmet, setting it on the table beside the control pad. The base lights dimmed slightly as the systems entered standby mode. I took a moment to rest my hand against the cold steel surface of the console. The vibration beneath it was steady and strong. I walked toward the generator chamber once more, ensuring all systems remained stable after the update. The hum of power filled the air, rhythmic and consistent. I made minor adjustments to the magnetic balance, reinforcing the base structure. Returning to the main chamber, I observed the stacked alloy plates one last time. Their resistance had been neutralized completely. The data was complete. The city's magnetic network now operated at a level beyond detection or interference. Every bridge, rail, and tower responded to my command with absolute precision. I stood in the center of the chamber and activated the external surveillance feed. The screens displayed Gotham in perfect detail. The faint glow of the city's lights reflected off the bay. The movement of trains, cars, and aircraft appeared as shifting patterns across the map. Every magnetic source within range was under observation. I adjusted the settings slightly, increasing resolution. The system's response time improved by 30%. I nodded once in acknowledgement of the result. Hours passed without interruption. The air in the chamber remained cool. The low hum of machinery continued, constant and reliable. The Cadmus alloy had been neutralized, and the grid adapted fully. The balance of control remained unbroken. Chapter 8, The Signal in the Core. The storm had passed, and Gotham lay under a grey sky heavy with moisture. The early morning light carried a dull brightness that reflected off the wet streets. I stood before the central console in my underground base, monitoring the grid for anomalies. The Cadmus alloy had been neutralized, and every section of the city's infrastructure responded with absolute precision. Yet, within the consistency, something faint pulsed through the data, a new magnetic fluctuation, sharp and steady. The reading was not human-made. It carried order, rhythm, and intelligence. I isolated the source. The signal originated near Wayne Tower. Its resonance was unlike any metal in Gotham. The pattern was clean, harmonized with an advanced internal frequency. It was not an accident. It was a sentient construct. The readings matched one individual precisely, Victor Stone, known as Cyborg. The pattern indicated he was not suppressing his system output, which meant he was investigating. Batman had noticed the grid's interference. The League had sent Cyborg to determine the cause. I studied the data for several minutes. His energy signature interacted with my magnetic field naturally. His technology was a combination of alien and human engineering. That made him an appropriate subject for direct analysis. I prepared for departure. My helmet sealed into place, its surface locking with a soft metallic sound. I adjusted my gloves and the control frequencies on the base's secondary interface. The defense grid shifted to automatic management mode. I ascended to the surface through the concealed lift, emerging into the industrial sector. The air above ground was cool and damp. Gotham's skyline stretched ahead, towers, bridges, steel veins pulsing with life. The magnetic field around me reacted softly to my presence. I began walking toward the center of the city. Each step was deliberate. My senses extended outward, tracing Cyborg's signature. It fluctuated slightly, as though he were adjusting his detection range. He was close. When I reached the outer perimeter of Wayne Tower, the street was quiet except for the sound of engines echoing from the distance. I felt his presence clearly now. His body radiated energy on multiple frequencies. He was above me, scanning the city from one of the tower's upper terraces. I entered the building. The lobby was nearly empty. The security personnel stood near the desk, focused on their monitors. I walked past them without speaking. None stopped me. The elevator doors opened with a faint chime. I rode to the top floor. The air changed with altitude, cooler, more sterile. When the doors opened, the hum of machinery became noticeable, a mechanical rhythm distinct from the building's systems. Cyborg stood near the window. His right arm was extended forward, projecting holographic scans of the city. His body emitted faint blue light from several points along his armor. The patterns of his internal network were constant and efficient. He noticed my presence almost immediately. The holographic display closed. His mechanical eye glowed briefly as he turned toward me. "You're the source," he said. His voice carried calm professionalism, typical of him during analysis. "I am," I said evenly. My tone was firm, measured. "You have been monitoring my work." He narrowed his eyes slightly. "You've altered Gotham's entire magnetic grid. That kind of interference isn't small." "It is controlled," I replied. "The city is stable." He folded his arms. "You're manipulating every metallic structure in Gotham." Batman picked up readings that looked like an attack coming from below the industrial zone. "He sent me to find the cause." I stepped closer, the magnetic field around me shifting slightly as I approached. "And now you have found it." His gaze moved to the metallic plates along my shoulders. "Who are you?" "I am Magneto." Cyborg scanned briefly, his systems humming softly. "Never heard of you," he said. "You would not have," I replied. "Your world has not known my name." He adjusted his stance. "You're not from here." "That detail is irrelevant," I said calmly. "You are not here to question origins. You are here to assess stability." He turned his attention back to his scanner for a moment. The holographic map of Gotham reappeared, filled with magnetic patterns that matched my grid. "You've done something big," he said. Every bridge, power relay, and rail line is tied into one field. That's dangerous. Only to those who seek to damage this city, I said. Batman doesn't see it that way. I inclined my head slightly. Batman sees what he chooses to see. You are different. You understand control. You are half metal. You can sense what I have built. He paused. His systems adjusted automatically, synchronizing briefly with the grid. I could feel it. His cybernetic components harmonized with the field I had created. His body responded naturally, its circuitry aligning with my magnetic resonance. You're running a stabilization loop, he said, analyzing quickly. That's why Gotham's power output has been clean for the last 72 hours. You're using your magnetic field to smooth the electrical current. Correct, I said. Your assessment is accurate. He studied the projection again. Still doesn't explain why. I require balance. That is sufficient reason. Cyborg crossed his arms again. You've got a lot of power, Magneto. Enough to cause a blackout over half the city if you push it. What's your end game? Maintenance, I said simply. He raised an eyebrow. You expect me to believe you built a global-scale electromagnetic network just to maintain the city? I expect nothing, I said, my tone calm. I state facts. You are free to test them if you doubt my intention. He hesitated. His expression remained focused but uncertain. You're not exactly giving me a reason to leave you alone. I walked past him toward the edge of the terrace. The wind pressed lightly against my coat. Below, Gotham stretched wide, filled with steel and glass. I gestured outward. This city's structure is fragile. Power lines, bridges, machinery all subject to failure. My presence ensures it does not collapse under its own weight. Cyborg turned toward me. You've taken control without asking. You know that makes people nervous. I do not seek their approval. He exhaled slightly. You sound a lot like someone Batman doesn't like dealing with. That is his concern, not mine. He stepped closer. His mechanical systems shifted with faint whirring sounds. I could reroute your field from the tower's generators. Shut it down. You could attempt it, I said calmly. But you would fail. Your systems rely on electromagnetic resonance for function. Disrupting my field would disrupt you. His eye glowed slightly brighter as he calculated. You're not wrong, he admitted quietly. I turned my head toward him. You understand power. You feel it within you as constant motion. You can sense what I sense, the rhythm of metal, the flow of energy. He looked at me for a long moment. You've got the whole city connected. That kind of network draws attention. Batman's going to want answers. The League's going to get involved. I am aware. He frowned slightly. If this is some kind of defense grid, they'll see it as a threat. Then they are mistaken, I said. It is a precaution. He tapped the side of his head. You're already on the League's radar. I expected as much, I replied evenly. Tell them my actions are not against them. I maintain order here. He tilted his head slightly, analyzing. You sound confident. I am confident because I am correct. For a brief moment, the air between us carried tension, not of hostility, but of analysis. Cyborg's internal systems emitted soft vibrations, resonating faintly with my magnetic field. He was measuring its strength. I allowed it. After a few seconds, he stepped back. You're running frequencies that are cleaner than the city's power grid. You've actually improved output by 9%. I can't deny that. Then your conclusion? I asked. He looked toward the city below. You're stabilizing Gotham's infrastructure, but you're also in control of it. That makes this complicated. Complication is your term, I said. I call it security. He met my eyes. I'm going to report this to Batman. Do so, I said calmly. He will come if he chooses. I will not stop him. He studied me for several seconds more, then nodded slightly. I don't get a hostile reading from you. But if you turn this into something else, the League will respond fast. I would expect no less, I said. Cyborg turned away, his systems adjusting as he prepared for flight. I'll be in touch, he said. His boosters activated, releasing controlled bursts of energy. He rose smoothly into the air, scanning the city one last time before disappearing into the skyline. I watched until his signal faded from my perception. The air grew still again. The city below returned to silence, its structure humming steadily under my control. I returned to the elevator and descended to the lower floors. The magnetic field remained stable throughout the city. Cyborg had not interfered. His readings confirmed that he understood the purpose of my grid. He would report to Batman, and Batman would consider his assessment carefully before acting. Back in my base, I removed my helmet and placed it on the console. The data stream updated with Cyborg's recorded resonance pattern. His internal technology combined human design with extraterrestrial alloy, resistant to magnetic disruption but responsive to harmonic synchronization. I integrated this into the grid's database. The defense network now recognized and could adapt to any similar technological frequency. Gotham's infrastructure remained safe. I walked across the chamber to the generator once more. The hum of power continued, consistent and strong. I adjusted the field slightly, aligning it to the improved resonance Cyborg's systems had revealed. The flow became smoother, reducing interference. I rested my hand against the surface of the generator, feeling the faint vibration through the metal. My expression remained steady. The grid functioned with perfect precision. Above ground, Gotham continued its usual rhythm. Cyborg would return to the League, and discussions would follow. The outcome was predictable. I would monitor them from here. I walked back to the console and sat before the main display. The city's map expanded across the screen, each section pulsing softly with magnetic life. The field covered every street, every bridge, every line of steel. It was complete. Chapter 9, The Dark Knight's Inquiry. Gotham's sky hung low and unmoving, the color of wet ash. From my base below the industrial district, I monitored the city through the magnetic field that stretched across every beam and bridge. The hum of the grid was calm, uninterrupted. Each signal returned stable readings. Cyborg had departed without tampering. His investigation had been thorough enough to confirm his integrity. Hours passed. The rhythmic vibration of Gotham's machinery became familiar background noise. I was recalibrating the field's secondary balance line when the first sign of an approach appeared. A faint disturbance flickered in the upper registers of the network, small, exact, deliberate. It was not a machine. It was movement through metal. The magnetic displacement was minimal, designed to evade detection. Few individuals possessed such precision. I recognized the pattern immediately. Batman. He had come himself. I stood from the console and faced the reinforced entrance of the chamber. The lock sensors registered pressure along the outer frame. The disturbance grew stronger for a brief moment, then faded completely. Silence followed. He was inside. The lights dimmed slightly as his shadow crossed the threshold. He entered without sound, his armor absorbing each motion. The air carried the faint smell of oil and rain from above. He stopped several meters away, his cape still. His eyes met mine through the mask. "You're Magneto." "I am," I said evenly. My tone remained calm and precise. He studied the chamber, his gaze moving over the control panels and the walls lined with steel plating. "You've turned half the city into an electromagnetic relay." "Yes," I replied. Gotham required stability. I provided it. He looked toward the nearest monitor. The city's map glowed faintly with magnetic lines marking every structure. You're controlling everything made of metal, he said. That gives you control over nearly everything that matters here. Correct. He turned back toward me. You understand how dangerous that is? I understand its necessity, I said. He stepped closer, his movement controlled. You've interfered with infrastructure, public power systems, communications grids. You've placed yourself at the center of the city's function. That makes you a threat. To whom? I asked. To everyone who lives here, he said firmly. I met his gaze without shifting. The city has not suffered since I began my work. Power outages have ceased. Train collisions have not occurred. The structural faults in your bridges have been corrected. My presence has improved your city. Your presence removes choice, he said. You're deciding what happens without consent. The city's leaders would not understand what I've built, I said. You understand order, detective. You maintain it every night. I do it within limits. Limits you created, I said. He ignored the comment and continued scanning the room. His armor emitted faint mechanical tones as sensors activated. You're not using outside power. You're drawing directly from the magnetic field. Efficiency is logical, I replied. He turned back toward me. Why Gotham? Because it needed control. That's not an answer, he said sharply. It is the only one that matters, I said calmly. He took another step closer, stopping within arm's reach of the central platform. His stance remained cautious but balanced. You're not from here, he said. No. Then you know this isn't your world. I know it functions as any other does, I said. Disorder thrives where structure fails. I corrected that. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Cyborg said you didn't act hostile. He said you stabilized Gotham's grid. He was correct. But you're capable of collapsing it, he said. I am capable of many things, I replied, but capability does not equal intention. His jaw tightened slightly behind the mask. You built a system that only you can control. That makes it a weapon. It is protection, I said evenly. It cannot harm unless someone attempts to disrupt it. You're expecting me to believe that. I expect you to verify it, I said. You are thorough. Test the results yourself. The field is clean, the energy balanced. You will find no irregularities. He did not respond immediately. He turned toward the main console. Show me your readings. I gestured to the display. The magnetic map brightened, revealing Gotham's complete layout. Every district pulsed faintly with rhythmic energy flow. He approached the console and examined it closely. The fluctuations are minimal, he said quietly. You've stabilized the city's current beyond industrial standards. As I said. He looked up. How long can this sustain? Indefinitely, I said. The field renews itself through natural geomagnetic flow. Maintenance is minimal. He studied the data further. You've corrected the instability in the industrial grid, he said. That system's been failing for years. You neglected it, I said. I corrected it. His eyes narrowed slightly. You've been monitoring everything: traffic signals, security systems, power lines. Yes. Do you record the data? No, I said. I am not interested in surveillance. He looked unconvinced. Then what's your goal? Balance, I said. You could have come to me, he said. If you wanted to help the city, you didn't have to take control of it. Your methods are inefficient, I said. You manage crime through fear and deterrence. I manage stability through control. Both are effective. Mine is permanent. His expression hardened slightly. You think you can do this without consequences? There are always consequences, I said. The difference lies in who bears them. He folded his arms. You sound sure of yourself. I am, I said. He looked back toward the monitors. If I wanted to disable your system, how would I do it? You would not, I said plainly. That's not what I asked. I answered correctly, I said. He exhaled slowly. You understand I can't ignore this. Gotham doesn't tolerate people who decide they know what's best for everyone. I am aware of Gotham's tolerance, I said. It changes depending on who controls it. He gave a small, humorless exhale. You're not leaving me much of a choice. You have many, I said. You may destroy what I have built and return this city to dysfunction. Or you may let it stand and allow your citizens to benefit from its stability. He looked at me steadily. You're not leaving Gotham, are you? No, I said. Then I'll have to watch you. I expected you would. He turned slightly, preparing to leave. If your system hurts anyone, I'll stop you. If my system hurts anyone, it will already be too late for you to act, I said. He stopped briefly, his back still toward me. You're confident? I am correct, I said simply. He did not respond immediately. Then he walked toward the exit. Don't give me a reason, he said quietly. I never will, I replied. He left without further words. The sound of his boots faded quickly into the distance. The magnetic field recorded his departure automatically. I waited until his presence moved beyond the perimeter before resuming my work. The console displayed the same steady readings. Nothing had changed. I had allowed him to see the truth. He would report his findings to the League. They would analyze, discuss, and eventually watch. That was acceptable. I removed my gloves and placed them on the console. My reflection in the steel surface showed calm composure. I sat and resumed calibration. The network required fine adjustment following the field fluctuation caused by his entry. The process lasted several hours. Each component returned to proper resonance. The hum of the bass remained steady. By nightfall, Gotham's skyline above glowed faintly in the evening haze. The grid's energy reflected through the city in precise rhythm. I monitored the outer sensors again. Batman's signal appeared once more, distant but consistent. He was observing from the rooftops. He would continue to watch. That was expected. I turned off the outer displays and focused on the grid's internal flow. The readings aligned perfectly. The balance remained intact. The conversation had achieved its purpose. I had demonstrated control and transparency without weakness. He had seen the truth. His curiosity would now shift to understanding, not confrontation. I stood from the console and crossed the chamber to the generator. The low hum continued, constant and reliable. The energy pulse matched Gotham's own frequency perfectly. I adjusted the containment field slightly. The vibration steadied. The defense system remained ready. Every piece of metal in Gotham responded within milliseconds to command. The grid operated with precision. Batman's presence changed nothing. I walked toward the far side of the chamber where the cadmium alloys were stored. Their resistance remained nullified, their surfaces inert. I examined them briefly before returning to the platform. The night's work was complete. Chapter 10, The Measure of Control. The grid ran clean. No interference, no irregular pulse. Gotham's metallic structure resonated through my perception like a steady current of order. The city had accepted the rhythm I imposed on it. The buildings, rail lines, and bridges were all bound to my field now, maintained with precision. I stood before the central console, reading the harmonic data. The values were exact. Every number matched projection. I adjusted the generator output by a small fraction to account for air density fluctuation above the bay. The correction balanced the field immediately. Hours had passed since Batman's visit. He had not returned. His pattern of observation remained predictable, distant, patient, methodical. He would wait until he confirmed that my network did not endanger Gotham. The sensors registered another signal then. Two distinct magnetic signatures approached from opposite directions. Both moved cleanly, without stealth. Their profiles matched Cyborg's hybrid alloy and Batman's titanium composite armor. They were returning. I watched the readings until they converged at the industrial perimeter. They were moving toward the hidden entrance of the base. I opened the magnetic locks in advance. The gate released quietly as they entered. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor. Cyborg's heavy but even, Batman's nearly silent. The chamber lights adjusted automatically as they stepped into view. Batman's expression was unreadable beneath the cowl. Cyborg's systems emitted a soft mechanical pulse, his energy stable. Batman stopped near the console. "You knew we were coming," he said. "I did," I replied evenly. "You are both predictable in your timing." He ignored the remark and looked around the chamber again. "You didn't lie about your grid," he said. "The readings have stayed consistent." Cyborg stepped forward, scanning the equipment. "Everything's running smoother than last time. You've cut the city's electrical noise by almost 20%. I turned toward him. "That was the intended result." Batman examined the monitor closely. "You've created something that works," he said. "But I still don't trust it." "I did not ask for trust," I said. Cyborg raised his hand slightly. "We didn't come to argue," he said. "We came to test it." Batman looked at me directly. "We're going to run a controlled simulation. We need to know what happens if the city's power grid comes under attack. Cyborg will generate an artificial surge. We'll measure how your system reacts." I regarded him quietly for a moment. "You wish to challenge the integrity of my design?" "I want to confirm it won't collapse if someone tries to sabotage it," he said. "Proceed," I said. Cyborg activated a small projection device from his left arm. A holographic interface appeared, mapping the city's energy flow. "I'll start by introducing a microfluctuation across the northern power line," he said. "Low level, harmless, but enough to simulate a coordinated overload." "Begin," I said. The hum of the bass deepened slightly as Cyborg transmitted the signal through his systems. The fluctuation appeared instantly on my display, a brief rise in energy, localized around the power conduits feeding into Wayne Tower. I extended my right hand and adjusted the polarity of the entire grid. The surge vanished. The current stabilized. Cyborg checked his readings. Counter stabilization time, 0.3 seconds. Batman glanced at the monitor. "That's faster than any existing automated control system." I lowered my hand. "You see the result?" Cyborg nodded slowly. "You built a self-correcting feedback loop through magnetic harmonization. That's actually impressive." Batman's tone remained steady. "That's one test. Let's push it further." He turned to Cyborg. "Trigger a full-scale electromagnetic disruption across multiple nodes." Cyborg hesitated briefly. "That could risk frying every piece of equipment in a 5-block radius." Batman looked at me. "Can your system handle it?" "It can," I said. Cyborg recalibrated his arm interface. "All right. Wide area test. You might want to brace the lower grid." I spread my awareness through the network, reinforcing the primary conduits. The metallic framework of the city responded instantly, each segment locking into synchronized alignment. Cyborg initiated the surge. The power across Gotham spiked, the readings flashing bright red across the display. The overload spread through the electrical systems like lightning, striking 10 separate nodes simultaneously. The air within the chamber shifted under the pressure. I raised both hands, controlling the current directly. The city's field bent to my will. Each surge redirected into isolated channels, absorbed harmlessly by the metallic infrastructure. Within moments, the overload dissipated. The readings returned to normal. Cyborg exhaled quietly. Grid integrity, 100%, he said. No system damage. Batman's expression remained serious. You stopped a coordinated citywide surge in less than 5 seconds. Yes, I said. You have your proof. He looked at the main console again. You've created something no one else could control, he said. If this ever fails. It will not, I said, interrupting calmly. Cyborg began reviewing the data. You're not just stabilizing the field, you're improving it every time it reacts. It's learning from interference. I designed it to adapt, I said. Gotham's infrastructure shifts daily. Stability requires flexibility. Batman crossed his arms. You're aware this kind of system could be weaponized. Everything can be weaponized, I said. He did not respond immediately. Instead, he walked toward one of the steel walls, his hand brushing lightly across its surface. The vibration under his glove revealed the steady hum of the field. He turned back toward me. You've made the city dependent on you. Dependent on stability, I corrected. He met my gaze. Same thing. Cyborg finished compiling the data. He's right about one thing, he said. If something happens to you, the grid could destabilize. You need a backup control core. I looked at him. You wish to access my system? No, he said quickly. I'm saying I could help you design a safeguard. A failsafe that keeps the field stable even if you're not maintaining it. Batman nodded slightly. That's reasonable. Gotham shouldn't rely on one person. I considered his proposal for a moment. The logic was sound, but unnecessary. Your failsafe would weaken the system, I said. My control is precise. Any secondary interference risks instability. Cyborg frowned slightly. We can build it so it only activates if your field drops below a certain threshold. I do not fail, I said. He looked uncertain how to respond. Batman broke the silence. Cyborg's right. The city needs redundancy. You're too central to the system. You misunderstand, I said. The grid is an extension of me. It is not separate. He regarded me quietly. Then you are part of Gotham now, he said. If that is your interpretation, so be it, I said. Cyborg sighed lightly. At least let me record the readings for the League database. If anything happens, we'll have reference data. I gave a short nod. Record what you wish. It changes nothing. He downloaded the data set through his ARM interface. The console's lights dimmed slightly during the transfer. When it was complete, he disconnected. Batman stepped back from the wall. You've proven your system works. But I'll still keep an eye on it. I would expect nothing less, I said. He adjusted his cape. If I find any sign that you are using it for more than stability, I'll shut it down. You will find no such sign, I said. He turned toward the exit. We'll see. Cyborg gave me a nod. For what it's worth, this is impressive. You could probably teach half the tech division at the Watchtower a few things. I doubt they could learn, I said. He chuckled quietly and followed Batman toward the corridor. You don't mince words, hey. I do not waste them, I said. They left the chamber without further discussion. I remained still for a moment, listening as their footsteps faded into the distance. The magnetic field registered their departure from the perimeter. The chamber returned to silence. The grid resumed its steady hum. I approached the console again. The readings from their test appeared across the screen. The system had performed perfectly, without deviation. I adjusted the fine-tuning parameters for future automatic balancing, locking the new data into place. The energy flow through the base stabilized at 99.8% efficiency. I examined the numbers once more before turning away. The city's light above ground dimmed as evening settled. The field adjusted naturally to the changing electrical output. No interference. No instability. I stood near the central platform for a while, observing the steady rhythm of the generator. The faint vibration through the floor was constant. I reached out and traced the edge of the control panel with one hand. The metal was cool beneath my glove. The base lights dimmed slightly as power diverted to the upper sectors. I watched the change occur in real time through the sensors. The transition was seamless. Hours passed in quiet monitoring. The system remained flawless. Chapter 11, The Interference of Command. The hum of the generator had not changed since nightfall. I stood at the center of my base, reviewing the field readings once more. Gotham's magnetic stability remained perfect. Every steel structure within the city's limits was synchronized to my control, the field's resonance smooth and precise. The last conversation with Batman and Cyborg had been days ago. Since then, there had been no leak interference. The city's power output had improved by 12%, and no technical anomalies had occurred. At 3:17, the first deviation appeared. A magnetic signature pulsed faintly through the field, weak, unfamiliar, deliberate. It was not random interference. It carried a structure, a pattern meant to imitate natural current. I isolated the signal. It originated from outside Gotham, moving through an encrypted military frequency. The source triangulated to a mobile command satellite under government control. I increased the scan resolution. The encryption carried a distinct identifier, Task Force X Command Relay, designation Argus. Amanda Waller. She had intercepted the League's private report. Now her agents were moving. I watched the signal extend toward Gotham's western edge. A transport aircraft approached under magnetic shielding. Its fuselage emitted a low electromagnetic hum, experimental stealth plating with minimal metallic signature. I recognized the pattern from Cadmus research files. I expanded the field's sensitivity. 6 heat signatures appeared inside the aircraft. They carried standard weaponry mixed with enhanced prototype arms. Their trajectory placed them directly above the industrial sector. I raised my hand and adjusted the magnetic current around the aircraft. The field bent gently, slowing its descent without triggering detection. I let it land in the abandoned freight yard near the docks. Through the sensors, I observed the figures emerge uniformed, disciplined, moving with silent coordination. Their communication frequency was encrypted, but the pulses carried familiar phrasing. Waller's orders were direct and precise. Locate the electromagnetic source. Retrieve data. Neutralize if hostile. I left the console and crossed the chamber to the elevator. The platform rose through the old service shaft. When the door opened, cold air met me. The docks were empty except for faint light from the distance. The agents moved toward the old warehouse overlooking the bay. Their equipment included magnetic dampeners strapped to their armor. They believed it would shield them from detection. It did not. I stepped out from the shadows of the dock's steel supports as they reached the entrance. The team leader raised a hand to halt. Visual contact, he said quietly into his COMM. They turned, weapons raised, formation tight. Lower your weapons, I said. My voice was calm, unhurried, resonating through the empty yard. The leader responded sharply. Identify yourself. I am Magneto. He gave a brief signal to his team. One agent activated a scanning device. The equipment whined softly. It's him, the agent confirmed. The leader aimed his weapon. By order of Task Force X Command, you are under detainment for unauthorized interference with federal infrastructure. I raised my hand slightly. You have no authority here. Stand down, he ordered. I will not, I said evenly. He motioned to fire. The sound of gunfire broke the stillness. The rounds reached halfway before disintegrating midair. The fragments fell harmlessly to the ground. I extended my other hand, and the metallic components of their rifles twisted apart, pieces falling in a clatter of steel. The agents hesitated. The leader adjusted his earpiece. Control, he's resisting arrest. Engaging Plan B. Before he could finish, I altered the polarity of their armor. The magnetic fields locked them in place. They froze instantly, unable to move. Their weapons slid out of reach. You were sent by Amanda Waller, I said. No one answered. Her orders are clear: observe, capture, contain, I continued. She will learn that none of these are possible. The leader strained against the magnetic pressure. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand perfectly, I said. Your director believes she can control every anomaly she discovers. She is mistaken. He struggled again. You're destabilizing national defense protocols. I stopped him with a slight movement of my hand. His armor tightened just enough to restrict his breathing for a moment. You will not speak of defense when your government experiments with forces beyond its comprehension. The remaining agents stayed silent. I released the leader's armor slightly, allowing him to breathe normally. You will return to your commander, I said. You will tell her that Gotham is not hers to claim. The magnetic field released them simultaneously. They stumbled back, unarmed. None attempted further resistance. The leader tapped his COMM. Control, target confirmed. Mission compromised. The voice that answered through the COMM was unmistakable, calm, measured, firm. Amanda Waller. You're still alive, she said. Put me on visual. The leader adjusted his visor. Waller's image projected above the group, clear and sharp. She stood in her command center surrounded by monitors, her expression neutral. Magneto, she said. I met her gaze through the projection. Director Waller. You've made quite an impression, she said. You've interfered with a classified satellite frequency, compromised national assets, and commandeered an entire city's infrastructure. That's a federal violation on multiple counts. I have committed none of your crimes, I said. I have stabilized what your institutions neglected. You call that justification? She asked. I call it efficiency, I said calmly. She regarded me with sharp focus. You think I'm going to let you build a city-sized weapon and call it stability? You overestimate your control, Director, I said. She gave a short laugh, dry and humorless. You're powerful, I'll give you that. But no one operates in my jurisdiction without permission. You're on my radar now. I do not require your permission, I said. Her tone hardened. Then I'll take that as confirmation of hostility. I raised my hand. The projection flickered as her communication line distorted. You will not interfere with Gotham, I said. Your agents will leave now. The signal crackled. You're forcing my hand, she said. I am preventing your mistake, I replied. Her image vanished. The communication link severed instantly. The leader turned toward me again. You think this ends with us? She'll send others. She may send armies, I said. It will change nothing. The magnetic field around the area increased. The agents' weapons lifted from the ground and floated toward the bay. One by one, they dropped into the water. "You will leave Gotham," I said. "Now." The leader hesitated, then motioned for retreat. They moved quickly toward their aircraft. The engines roared as the plane lifted off, its metal frame humming under my control. I adjusted its flight path, ensuring it left the city limits before releasing it. When the sound faded, I turned back toward the warehouse. The structure's steel frame vibrated faintly from the magnetic pressure. I stepped inside. The air smelled of rust and oil. I reached for the communicator panel on the wall and activated the base link. The transmission opened to the control room below. "Power fluctuations contained," the system reported automatically. "Resume normal operation," I said. The lights in the base stabilized. The generators hummed steadily again. I descended into the chamber through the elevator. The readings on the monitors showed minor magnetic distortion from the encounter, nothing significant. I recalibrated the outer defense field to include new anti-surveillance protocols. Any future government approach would trigger immediate neutralization. The sensors detected a brief residual transmission from orbit. Waller's command satellite repositioning. She was observing from above now, gathering data silently. I tilted my head slightly and strengthened the magnetic interference around the city. Her satellite's readings flattened to zero. She would find nothing. I moved to the console and reviewed the communication log. The agent's entry had been recorded entirely. Their armor frequency, weapon composition, and biosignature data had been catalogued automatically. I transferred the information into the archive. Cyborg's previous analysis of Cadmus technology matched several readings from their equipment. Waller was using remnants of the same research division. Her resources were extensive, but not beyond reach. I adjusted the grid once more, synchronizing it with the new data. Gotham's outer perimeter field thickened slightly, expanding coverage across the bay. The city's protection was now complete from both terrestrial and orbital detection. Hours passed as I refined each layer. The hum of power deepened as the grid aligned. The field's outer edge glowed faintly on the display. When the calibration finished, I stood back from the console. My expression remained calm. The base lights dimmed to standard level. Above ground, Waller's aircraft would be returning to her command base. She would analyze her failure and prepare another strategy. She always did. I returned to the generator. The metal vibrated gently under my hand. The field was stable. The interference from her operation had ended. Gotham remained mine to maintain. Chapter 12, The Alliance in Motion. The hum of the generator remained steady. I stood before the console, watching as the grid displayed no movement beyond the usual oscillation. The air in the chamber carried a faint metallic scent, the result of increased field compression after the government's failed intrusion. Their aircraft had long since vanished over the horizon, but their presence lingered in the data. The sensors still registered residual electromagnetic distortions from the stealth plating they had used. Amanda Waller would not stop. She had measured failure once and would now prepare with precision. It was in her nature to adapt. At 2:43, the base sensors flickered briefly, not from outside interference but from within the system's communication range. The signal carried a specific resonance: Cyborg. He was approaching from the east side of Gotham, flight vector constant, system stable. His pattern showed no stealth, he intended to be seen. I shifted the magnetic locks on the outer gates, allowing entry. The steel doors opened with a soft mechanical sound. The hum of his propulsion grew louder as he descended. A moment later, he landed near the dock entrance above the industrial district. Through the network, I followed his movement as he entered the elevator and descended to the base level. The door opened, and he stepped inside the chamber. His mechanical components emitted a faint blue light against the grey walls. "You've had visitors," he said. "Yes," I said calmly. Your government. He glanced at the control console, his mechanical eye focusing. I picked up the interference from orbit. You repelled them. I did. He walked closer to the main monitor. Waller, he said, his tone carrying recognition. Yes, I said. She sent a unit into my city. They failed. He looked up from the data stream. You know she won't stop. I am aware. He folded his arms. Batman figured she'd move after our last report. She's been watching you through Argus satellites since the first time we met. She will see nothing now, I said. Her satellites are blind. Cyborg studied the readouts. You jammed her systems completely. That's not easy. Even the League has trouble blocking Argus surveillance. I do not experience difficulty, I said evenly. He exhaled quietly, a faint trace of amusement crossing his expression. Right. Well, she's escalating. I intercepted encrypted traffic from her command base before I came here. She's coordinating with Cadmus. She's planning another deployment, this time with enhanced operatives. Task Force X, I said. He nodded. You've heard of them. They are her disposable assets, I said. She's already mobilizing them, he said. I traced her orders to a field team preparing near Bloodhaven. They're supposed to enter Gotham within 24 hours. They will not succeed, I said. He glanced at me. You sound certain. I am. He sighed lightly. Batman wants to avoid open conflict inside Gotham. Waller's operations usually end badly for everyone involved. That is not my concern, I said. It becomes your concern if she sends meta-humans against you, he said. I studied him silently for a moment. You are here to warn me, I said. Yes, he said. And to help. I looked toward the monitors. The grid map displayed the outer perimeter of the city. What form would your assistance take? I can intercept her communications directly, he said. She's using military-grade encryption, but I can crack it. If I link with your grid, we can monitor her movements in real time. I turned toward him. You would connect your systems to mine. It's the fastest way, he said. You understand what that means, I said. Your internal network will synchronize with my magnetic field. Every function of your technology will be exposed to me. He met my gaze steadily. I trust you to handle it. You should not, I said, but there was no hostility in my tone. He smiled faintly. Batman said the same thing before he let me in here last time. I stepped closer to the console. Begin your connection. Cyborg extended his right arm. A thin cable detached from his armor and interfaced with the port beside the console. The monitors flickered as his systems synchronized with the grid. His body emitted a low hum as data transferred between our networks. Connection stable, he said. The map of Gotham expanded, overlaying new data channels from Argus communication lines. Cyborg's voice adjusted slightly as his systems integrated. I'm reading multiple encrypted frequencies. One of them's using a shortwave bounce through Cadmus's satellite relay. I extended my hand toward the console. Isolate it. He nodded. On it. The holographic projection brightened, displaying a transmission pattern originating from Bloodhaven. A female voice filtered through static, sharp, controlled, unmistakable. Deploy by 0300. Retrieve or neutralize the electromagnetic anomaly. Use lethal force if necessary. Cyborg frowned. That's her. Yes, I said. Another voice came through mail, steady but irritated. You're asking us to go up against someone who tore through an Argus strike team like paper. You planning to tell us who we're fighting? You'll have your briefing on arrival, Waller replied. Move out. The transmission ended. Cyborg turned toward me. They'll be here soon. Let them come, I said. He looked at me seriously. Waller's not like the others you've dealt with. She'll keep coming until she gets what she wants. Then she will learn disappointment, I said. He exhaled softly. Batman wants to minimize damage. If there's a fight, the League gets dragged in, and Waller will use that to justify escalation. I am not responsible for her decisions, I said. He rubbed the side of his head. You're not making this easy. I do not intend to, I said. He looked at the grid again. If they're coming through Bloodhaven, I can intercept them before they reach Gotham. But I'll need your help. You have it, I said. He smiled briefly. I'll take that as agreement. We began configuring the grid's outer edge to extend beyond Gotham's western boundary. The map displayed new lines stretching toward Bloodhaven's industrial port. Cyborg synchronized his internal systems with the new frequency range. Argus transport leaving Bloodhaven now, he said. They're using low-altitude drones to mask their flight path. I raised my hand slightly. The metallic frames of the distant aircraft became visible to me through magnetic resonance. I have them. Cyborg's mechanical eye glowed brighter as he accessed the data feed. I'm piggybacking their communication. Waller's feeding them live updates from her command base. Disable it, I said. On it. He concentrated, his systems pulsing with energy. The communication line cut instantly. Signal dropped, he said. They're flying blind now. I adjusted the field to create a controlled electromagnetic disturbance over the route. The aircraft's sensors began to falter, readings dropping to static. They're losing navigation, Cyborg said. You're scrambling their flight instruments. They will turn back, I said. They should, he replied. But Waller doesn't pull back that easily. He was correct. The aircraft did not retreat. Instead, it descended lower, switching to manual control. Through the grid, I detected the metallic resonance of heavy armor 4 suits reinforced with cadmium alloy. Enhanced operatives, Cyborg said quietly. Looks like she brought her A-team. They will land at the southern perimeter, I said. He nodded. I'll go intercept them. No, I said. Stay here. I will handle this. He frowned. You don't have to face them alone. I am not alone, I said. The city is with me. He hesitated, then nodded. All right. I'll monitor from here. I ascended through the elevator shaft. The air outside was cold, the horizon faintly lit by distant streetlights. The magnetic field stretched before me, carrying the resonance of the approaching aircraft. It descended into the southern freight yard, the same location Waller's previous team had used. The engines powered down. 4 figures emerged, their armor identical black reinforced plating with blue luminescent seams. Each carried weaponry integrated into the suit. They moved with military precision. One raised a scanning device, sweeping the area. Target location confirmed, he said. I stepped forward from behind the steel containers. You will not proceed. The leader turned. Visual contact, he said. Engage. They opened fire. The rounds disintegrated midair. I raised my hand, and the magnetic field reversed their polarity. The weapons flew from their grasp and landed at my feet. They switched tactics. 2 activated pulse emitters on their gauntlets. The devices released concentrated electromagnetic bursts designed to disrupt control fields. The energy struck me harmlessly. Your weapons are ineffective, I said. They advanced. I lifted both hands. The metal of their armor locked instantly, joints freezing. One of them tried to break free, but the effort was useless. The leader gritted his teeth. Waller said you'd. I silenced him with a sharp motion. The armor compressed slightly, forcing him to stillness. You will not mention her name again, I said. The others remained motionless, caught within the magnetic grip. I adjusted the pressure, rendering them unconscious without harm. Their suits powered down automatically. The magnetic field lifted them into the air and carried them toward the edge of the bay. One by one, I placed them on the concrete near the water, their breathing steady. I turned my head slightly as a voice came through the COMM. It was Cyborg, his tone controlled. I saw the whole thing, he said. No casualties. As intended, I said. Waller's not going to like this, he said. She will adapt, I said. He paused briefly. Batman's going to want to talk again. I'll tell him you handled it. Tell him the truth, I said. He gave a small nod through the connection. I'll stay linked to the grid for now. We can track her response together. Agreed, I said. The link closed. The air around me calmed. The city's magnetic hum returned to its usual rhythm. I turned back toward the industrial skyline, the faint light from Gotham reflecting off the water. I began walking back toward the base, the sound of my steps steady against the concrete. Chapter 13, The Calculations of Industry. The base remained silent except for the low vibration of the generator. The grid extended across Gotham without disturbance. I stood before the main console, reviewing the data from the last confrontation. Waller's task force had been neutralized and extracted. Cyborg remained linked to my network, his signal faint but stable, continuing to monitor the outer edges of the field. At 4:12, the first external transmission reached my encrypted channel. It carried a clean industrial frequency, not military, not League. The signal bore a distinct pattern, orderly, mathematical, and deliberate. It was routed through a private satellite under the control of LexCorp. I examined the packet data. The encryption was high-level but predictable. I broke it within seconds. The message was direct, written in precise, professional language. To Magneto. I am aware of your existence and your influence over Gotham's electromagnetic systems. You have accomplished in weeks what others could not in years. Amanda Waller and the League are both reacting poorly. I do not react. I adapt. I have an offer. There was no signature, only coordinates and a time. Lex Luthor preferred efficiency. The meeting location was one of his corporate holdings on the outskirts of Metropolis, an old energy testing facility, long since repurposed into a private research hub. The time was 9 o'clock. I closed the message and adjusted the magnetic field around Gotham. The network's automated protocols would sustain control during my absence. I placed my helmet onto the console, the metal sealing firmly. The chamber lights dimmed as I ascended toward the surface. The sky was overcast as I left the industrial sector. I rose into the air, surrounded by the faint shimmer of magnetic force. The wind moved around me as I accelerated toward Metropolis. The flight took little time. The electromagnetic path between the two cities was clear, uninterrupted. When I arrived, the skyline of Metropolis glowed faintly beneath the morning haze. Its towers stood immaculate, structured, efficient. Lex Luthor's presence permeated every part of it. I descended toward the coordinates provided. The facility lay on the city's western perimeter, surrounded by reinforced fencing and automated defense turrets. The turrets recognized my magnetic field immediately but did not activate. He had programmed them to allow me entry. The outer doors opened as I approached. The interior was quiet. The walls were polished steel, the air clean, filtered. I followed the corridor to the central research floor. Lex Luthor was waiting. He stood before a transparent panel overlooking a wide laboratory filled with machinery and suspended alloy structures. He turned as I entered, his expression calm, his movements deliberate. "Magneto," he said. "You're punctual." "I value precision," I said. He smiled slightly. "So do I." I approached the edge of the platform. "Your message was direct," I said. "I assumed you preferred efficiency." "I do," he said. "And I respect anyone who achieves results. You've turned Gotham into a functioning system. That's not something anyone else has done. Not even their so-called hero." "You speak of Batman," I said. "I speak of a man obsessed with control," he said. "Not unlike myself. Or you." I regarded him quietly. "You arranged this meeting for more than conversation." He nodded. "Of course. I've read Waller's reports. She's treating you like a threat. The League is divided on what to do about you. That leaves opportunity for those who understand the situation." "You believe yourself among them," I said. "I know I am," he said confidently. "You've built a magnetic grid across Gotham. You've achieved energy stability beyond any current model. I can help you expand it." "I require no assistance," I said. He gave a faint, amused expression. "You misunderstand me. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering partnership. You and I both know that power is limited by reach. Your field covers Gotham. I can give you access to global infrastructure." I studied him for a moment. "In exchange for what?" He stepped closer, his tone measured. "Information. I've been studying the same materials Waller and Cadmus use. The magnetic-resistant alloys. I have prototypes that neutralize their weaknesses. I can provide them to you. In return, I want data, your grid schematics, your harmonic frequency models." "You wish to duplicate my work," I said. "I wish to improve it," he said calmly. "Imagine if every major city functioned with your precision. No waste, no fluctuation. I can make that happen." I looked toward the laboratory floor. Rows of metallic prototypes lined the walls, each connected to monitoring systems. "You experiment without restraint," I said. He smiled slightly. "Restraint is for those who don't understand the stakes." "You risk catastrophe," I said. "So do you," he said. "The difference is that I prepare for it." I stepped closer, the air shifting faintly as the magnetic field responded to me. The tools on the nearby tables vibrated softly. "You believe you can control me," I said. He met my gaze without hesitation. "No. I know better than that. But I can work with you." "Why should I allow it?" I asked. "Because Waller won't stop, and the League won't either," he said. "They see you as a variable. I see you as proof.